In the vast emptiness of space they wait, silent sentinels drifting through the void between the stars. They are ancient beyond reckoning, these watchers, their origins lost in the mists of cosmic time. They are not alive, not in any sense that mortal minds could comprehend. They are constructs woven from the very fabric of space and time, given form and purpose by intellects vast and alien. Their mission is singular, their dedication absolute: to watch, to guard, to maintain the fragile balance that holds the universe together. For eons, they have stood their silent vigil, monitoring the ebb and flow of galactic civilizations, the rise and fall of species and empires. They have seen wonders and horrors beyond imagining, have witnessed the birth and death of suns. But through it all, their gaze has been focused on one singular point, one terrible threat lurking at the edges of reality: the adversary, the destroyer of worlds, the eater of stars, an ancient evil, as old as the cosmos itself, born in the chaos of the universe's birth. It is a hunger, a darkness beyond darkness, a void that seeks to consume all light, all life. It moves through the galaxy like a plague, devouring whole civilizations, leaving only ashes and echoes in its wake. The Watchers were created to stop it, to hold the darkness at bay. They wove their webs of energy across the stars, erected great pylons of impossible technology to act as locks, as cages for the adversary's malevolent power. The seal weakens, the pieces are in motion, the players take their positions, and in the silent depths of the void, the Watchers hold their breath, knowing that the fate of everything hangs in the balance. The silent descent has begun. The Ares Requiem glided through the emptiness of space, a tiny mote of warmth and light in the infinite cold. She was an old ship, her hull pitted and scarred from countless journeys, her engines thrumming with the weariness of ancient machinery. But she was a home, a sanctuary for the 5 souls that called her their own. In the captain's chair sat Ilana Cade, her eyes hard and haunted, her face bearing the weight of too many hard decisions. She had been a soldier once, a commander in the great wars that had torn humanity apart. She had seen things, done things that had left scars on her soul, indelible marks that could never be erased. She had come to space to forget, to lose herself in the vastness of the cosmos. But the ghosts of her past still haunted her, whispering in her ears in the long, cold nights. At the science station, Dr. Elias Trent hunched over his instruments, his eyes alight with a feverish intensity. He was a man driven, consumed by a singular obsession, the search for extraterrestrial life. It was a quest that had dominated his every waking moment, that had cost him friends, family, and reputation. He had been laughed out of the scientific community, denounced as a crackpot and a fraud. But still he persisted, driven by a certainty that bordered on madness. He knew that the truth was out there, waiting to be found, and he would find it, even if it cost him everything. In the engine room, Kayla Vance wrestled with the ship's temperamental reactor, her brow furrowed in concentration. She was a prodigy, a savant with machines, able to coax life from even the most stubborn of systems. But for all her skill, she could not fix the brokenness inside her, the wounds left by a life of abandonment and loss. She had grown up on the streets, an orphan in a world that had no place for her. She had survived by her wits and her fists, had learned the hard way that the only person she could rely on was herself. The Ares was the closest thing she had to a home, and she would keep it flying no matter the cost. At the navigation console, Reyes Mateo whispered quiet prayers, his fingers dancing over the controls with a delicate precision. He was a man of faith in a faithless universe, clinging to his beliefs in the face of overwhelming darkness. He had once been a priest, a shepherd of souls, but he had lost his way, had seen too much suffering, too much cruelty to maintain his faith in a loving God. Now he sought solace in the stars, in the beauty and mystery of the cosmos. He navigated by the ancient ways, by the positions of the stars and the whispers of the solar wind. And in the quiet moments, he prayed, hoping against hope for a sign, for some indication that he was not alone in the universe. And at the helm sat Asher Velos, his hands steady on the controls, his eyes fixed on the endless expanse of space before him. He was a haunted man, a soul burdened by guilt and regret. He had once been a pilot in the Earth Defense Force, had been hailed as a hero for his skill and bravery. But in a moment of weakness, of fear, he had faltered. And people had died, good people, people he had sworn to protect. He had fled, had run to the stars to escape his shame. But in the quiet moments, in the long, cold nights, he could still hear their screams, could still see their faces in his dreams. They were a broken crew, each carrying their own scars, their own demons. But together they were something more. They were a family, bound by the shared experience of the void, by the knowledge that in the vastness of space, they only had each other. And as the Eris drifted through the darkness, propelled by a mission they barely understood, they clung to that bond, to that fragile connection that was the only thing keeping them sane in the face of the unknown. Little did they know that their journey would take them to the very edges of the cosmos, to the boundaries of reality itself, that they would face horrors beyond imagining, would confront truths that would shatter their understanding of the universe. For in the silent depths of space, something ancient and terrible was stirring, something that had been waiting for eons for the right moment, the right souls to ensnare in its web of darkness. It appeared on their sensors without warning, a sudden spike of energy that jolted Matteo from his meditations. He frowned at the readings, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Captain," he called, his voice tight with tension. "You need to see this." Cade was at his side in an instant, her eyes scanning the data with a practiced intensity. "What am I looking at?" "I'm not sure," Matteo admitted, "but it's close and it's powerful, like nothing I've ever seen." Trent pushed his way to the console, his eyes alight with a manic excitement. "Let me see," he demanded, practically shoving Matteo aside in his eagerness. His fingers danced over the controls, refining the sensor data, isolating the anomaly's signal. And as the image resolved on the screen, he let out a gasp of astonishment. It was a pyramid, a vast construct of black stone, drifting in the void between the stars. Its surface was smooth and featureless, seeming to absorb the light around it, to swallow it whole. And at its apex, a symbol pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly light, a glyph that seemed to writhe and twist before their eyes, as if alive with some malevolent intelligence. "It's not possible," Trent breathed, his voice barely above a whisper. "The readings, the energy signature, it's like nothing I've ever seen. This thing, it's not natural, it can't be." Cade's face was grim, her jaw set with determination. "Velos, set a course, I want a closer look." Asher hesitated, a sudden sense of unease washing over him. There was something about the pyramid, something that set his teeth on edge, that made his skin crawl with an inexplicable dread. But orders were orders, and he was a soldier trained to obey. With a nod, he input the coordinates, his hands steady on the controls as the Eris banked towards the anomaly. As they drew closer, the pyramid seemed to grow, to loom larger in their view screens until it filled their entire field of vision. Up close, its surface was even more unsettling, a perfect, seamless expanse of black that seemed to pulse with an inner life, as if the very stone itself was somehow alive. And then they saw the entrance, a gaping maw of darkness that yawned open at the pyramid's base, beckoning them forward with a silent, irresistible call. "We should leave," Kayla said, her voice tight with fear. "This thing, it's wrong. It's not meant for us." But Trent was already moving, his eyes alight with a feverish intensity. "No," he said, his voice brooking no argument. "We have to go inside. Don't you see? This is it. The moment I've been waiting for my entire life. Proof that we are not alone in the universe." Cade hesitated, torn between caution and curiosity. But in the end, the lure of discovery was too strong to resist. With a nod, she signaled Asher to bring the ship in closer, to lock onto the pyramid's strange alien geometry. As the Eris settled into orbit, the crew prepared themselves for the unknown, checking their suits and weapons with a grim, determined efficiency. They knew that they were about to step into the void, to face something that defied all rational understanding. But they were explorers, pioneers, driven by that same irresistible urge that had propelled humanity to the stars. And as they descended towards the pyramid's yawning entrance, they felt a sense of purpose, of destiny, as if their entire lives had been leading up to this moment. Little did they know that they were walking into a trap, that the pyramid was a lure, that they were about to become pawns in a game that had been playing out across the eons, a cosmic struggle between light and darkness, order and chaos. The silent descent had begun, and the crew of the Ares Requiem were about to discover the true nature of the universe and the terrible price of knowledge. The interior of the pyramid was a labyrinth of twisting corridors and vast, echoing chambers, a maze of black stone and eldritch geometry. The crew moved cautiously, their lights playing over the walls, casting eerie shadows that seemed to writhe and dance with a life of their own. Trent led the way, his eyes wide with wonder, his scanner held before him like a talisman. He moved with a feverish intensity, as if drawn forward by some irresistible force, some siren call that only he could hear. Behind him, Cade and the others followed, their weapons at the ready, their eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of threat. But there was nothing, only the endless expanse of black stone and the deep, pervasive silence that seemed to press in on them from all sides. And then they saw the machine. It rose from the center of a vast, circular chamber, a towering construct of metal and crystal, pulsing with an eerie, otherworldly light. Its surface was etched with strange symbols, glyphs that seemed to writhe and twist before their eyes, as if alive with some malevolent intelligence. Trent let out a gasp of astonishment, his eyes wide with awe. "It's incredible," he breathed, moving forward as if in a trance. "The energy readings, they're off the scale. This thing, it's not just a machine, it's a gateway, a portal to somewhere else, somewhere beyond our understanding." Cade's face was grim, her hand tight on her weapon. "We shouldn't be here," she said, her voice tense with unease. "This place, it feels wrong, like we're trespassing in a tomb." But Trent wasn't listening. He was already at the base of the machine, his hands running over its surface, his eyes alight with a manic intensity. "Don't you see?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is it, the moment we've been waiting for, the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe." And then he pushed a button and all hell broke loose. The machine came alive with a deafening roar, a blast of energy that sent them all flying. Cade hit the ground hard, her head slamming against the stone, her vision swimming with stars. Through the haze of pain, she saw Trent, his body convulsing, his eyes rolled back in his head as the machine poured its arcane energies into him. And then the visions came, a flood of images and sensations that crashed over them like a tidal wave. They saw planets and stars, civilizations rising and falling. The ebb and flow of the cosmos played out in a dizzying fractal dance. They saw the adversary, the terrible hungering darkness that lurked at the edges of reality, saw the Watchers and their desperate, futile struggle to hold it at bay. They saw the pyramid, the great seal that held the darkness in check, saw the machine at its heart, the key that could unlock the gate and let the adversary free. And they saw themselves, tiny and insignificant against the vastness of the universe, pawns in a game that had been playing out since the dawn of time. Cade struggled to her feet, her head pounding, her vision blurred with tears. "We have to get out of here," she gasped, her voice raw with fear. "We have to warn them, tell them what's coming." But it was too late. The machine was already powering down, its energy spent, its purpose fulfilled. And in the depths of space, the adversary stirred, its ancient prison weakening, its terrible hunger growing with every passing moment. The crew of the Ares Requiem had played their part, had set in motion a chain of events that would echo across the stars. And as they fled back to their ship, their minds reeling with the weight of what they had seen, they knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The Ares Requiem fled through the void, her engines straining, her hull shuddering with the force of her acceleration. On the bridge, Asher fought to keep the ship on course, his hands white-knuckled on the controls, his face set in a mask of grim determination. Behind him, the others huddled together, their faces pale, their eyes haunted by the horrors they had witnessed. Trent was the worst off, his body racked with convulsions, his mind shattered by the visions that had been forced upon him. Cade tried to comfort him, to bring him back from the brink of madness, but it was no use. He was lost, a broken shell of the man he had once been, his brilliant mind consumed by the terrible knowledge that had been imparted to him. And then the voice came, a whisper in their minds, a presence that filled the ship like a cold, creeping mist. "You have done well," it said, its tone ancient and inhuman, filled with a terrible, alien intelligence. "You have served your purpose, have set in motion the events that will bring about the end of all things." Cade felt a chill run down her spine, a primal terror that set her heart racing. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice shaking with fear and anger. "What do you want from us?" The voice chuckled, a sound like the grinding of ancient stones. "I am the adversary," it said, its tone filled with a terrible, malevolent amusement. "The destroyer of worlds, the eater of stars, and you little creatures have freed me from my prison." Ash's face went pale, his hands trembling on the controls. "The machine," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. "It was a trap, a lure to bring us here." The adversary's laughter echoed through the ship, a sound that chilled them to the bone. "Yes," it said, its voice dripping with contempt. "The Watchers thought they could hold me forever, thought their little toys could keep me contained. But they underestimated the power of curiosity, the desire for knowledge that burns in the hearts of all living things." Cale's mind raced, desperately searching for a way out, for some way to undo the terrible mistake they had made. But there was nothing, no escape from the horror they had unleashed upon the universe. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why us? Why did you choose us?" The adversary's presence pressed in on them, suffocating in its intensity. "Because you were weak," it said, its voice filled with a terrible, predatory hunger. "Because you were flawed, driven by your own petty desires and fears. You were the perfect pawns, the perfect tools to bring about my release." Trent let out a moan of despair, his body shaking with the force of his sobs. "We didn't know," he whimpered, his voice broken and defeated. "We couldn't have known." The adversary's laughter was a physical force, a wave of malevolence that washed over them like a tide of filth. "Ignorance is no excuse," it said, its voice dripping with contempt. "You have unleashed the greatest horror the universe has ever known, and now you must bear witness to the consequences of your actions." And then the visions came again, a flood of images and sensations that tore at their minds like claws. They saw worlds consumed by darkness, saw civilizations crumbling to dust, saw the very fabric of reality unraveling before the adversary's terrible power. They saw the end of all things, the final, brutal extinction of life itself. And they knew with a terrible, sinking certainty that they were responsible, that their actions had brought about the doom of the entire universe. In that moment, something broke inside them, some last, fragile barrier of sanity and hope. They screamed, their voices raw with despair, their minds shattered by the weight of their terrible knowledge. And the adversary laughed, its terrible, inhuman laughter echoing through the void, drowning out their screams, drowning out the last fading embers of their humanity. In the depths of space, the Watchers gathered, their vast, ancient minds united in a single terrible purpose. They had failed, had underestimated the power of the adversary, the strength of its hunger. Now they could only watch as the darkness spread, as the adversary's power grew with every passing moment. They saw the end of all things, saw the universe consumed by an endless, eternal night. And they knew that they were powerless to stop it, that their eons of struggle and sacrifice had been for nothing. The adversary had won, and the universe would pay the price for their failure. But even in that moment of despair, there was a flicker of hope, a tiny, stubborn spark that refused to be extinguished. For the Watchers knew that the universe was vast and strange, filled with mysteries beyond the comprehension of even their ancient minds. And they knew that somewhere, in some distant corner of the cosmos, there might yet be a power that could challenge the adversary, a force that could stand against the darkness and bring light to the endless night. So they watched, and they waited, their minds reaching out across the vast expanses of space and time, searching for that one slim chance at salvation. And in the silence of the void, they held on to that hope, that tiny, flickering ember of possibility. For in the end, it was all they had left, the only thing that could keep the darkness at bay. And so they watched, and they waited, and they prayed to gods they had long since forgotten, hoping against hope for a miracle that might never come. The silent descent had ended, but the story was far from over. And in the depths of space, the watchers kept their vigil, watching and waiting for the day when the universe might be saved, or the day when all hope was lost forever.